Hello everyone and welcome to an Outlast Trials dive into the newspaper clippings the reagents may receive. With the original 8 clippings and the new 7 clippings a part of Project Deep Burn, these documents could show us more of what Murkoff wishes to control, perhaps even silence. I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts and opinions on the subject, and of course, if I miss anything, feel free to comment down below. But without any further delays, let's talk about what we know. The newspaper clippings, for those who are unaware, are a collectible, much like the documents that reagents can find within the trials, though, unlike the documents, these are not in the trials themselves. They can only be obtained after completing the new communal rebirth. Once completed, reagents will receive a small cutscene and a newspaper clipping, each one showing what can only be assumed as a successful activation of that particular reagent. As a sleeper agent, the reagent hears those 3 words, spider, eye, lamb, and completes the task that has been ingrained within their minds with the brainwashing process of Project Lathe. The larger question that could be asked is why? What would be the main purpose to activate a sleeper agent to complete these specific tasks we see within the newspaper clippings? So let's start from the top and find out. 83 die in mid-flight Jet Airlines explosion. Debris sets fire to Georgetown neighborhood. A tragic event that the reagents cause in what can only be described as a terrorist attack. An event that causes the death of 83 people, but it's clear that the entire plane was not the target. No, it is more likely that the reagents wanted to eliminate the 2 Cuban nationals on board, or wished to frame them, causing fear and hatred, as in the 1960s, the United States and Cuba weren't on the best of terms. If the CIA could alter people's views, then it would fuel hatred, causing business to potentially cut ties or even push the Cold War into something more violent, which would allow for money to be made with arms dealers. Teamster leader plunges to death. Firebrand union boss dies. Though it's believed he fell of his own volition, detectives describe Mr. Sherman's hotel room as being in a state of violent disarray. Of course, another case of a reagents being activated. This is something we see in the trials itself, the collapsing of labor unions. It's clear that this is caused on purpose, as Murkoff is a company above all. Labor unions would be devastating for a company that does what Murkoff does. It could also be for the sake of trickle-down economics. If they have to pay more to keep employees, or even silence them, then it's less money for themselves and the political parties that they hold interest in. Money plays a big part, and labor unions could be seen as a threat to that. Knife attack inside Vatican. Crazed attacker dead after injuring 3. Here, the Catholic Church is attacked and has lost documents in the confusion of the attack. Pope John XXIII sought to improve diplomatic relations between the United States and the Soviet Union, and even spoke out against nuclear warfare. Yet another sign of the CIA sabotaging to suppress peace. The reagent attacked Boston's Vicar General, a British auxiliary bishop, and an American, who most likely wasn't meant to be a target. Surprisingly, the Pope himself was not attacked, but this could be on purpose, to act as a scare tactic, or to not make anything look deliberate. If it looks like a random crazed attack, then no real connection can be made back to the CIA. The most interesting newspaper to me personally, Fire Explosions in Vladarminsky Yuridishsky Institute. I'm sure I messed up that pronunciation, I do apologize. Dozens injured in blaze, security measures doubled at neighboring prison. The blaze grew out of control, following the failure of both telephone lines and localized sirens, which would suggest sabotage. Firefighters arrive and they draw water from the facilities at the neighboring Vladimir Central Prison, which is holding American spy and pilot Gary Francis Powers. Gary Powers was an actual prisoner who was sentenced to 10 years for espionage after his plane was shot down over the Soviet Union. He served 21 months of his sentence before being released in a prisoner swap in 1962. And in 1977, he was a helicopter pilot for Los Angeles news station KNBC, where his helicopter crashed and he was killed. The reason I find this one the most interesting is only one other newspaper doesn't involve a death, and that is Guatemalan ambassador detained, where the reagent was trying to frame or stall diplomacy talks by fabricating evidence or impersonating Belgian police. The newspaper shows how the reagents here fail at the task, as Mr. Rosal continues to the embassy in Luxembourg after the whole ordeal. Returning back though to Gary Francis, he is the only notable figure. The fire is a distraction, as again sabotage seems clear, but Gary doesn't get released, nor does he get killed during the event. One of the first trials a reagent will ever do is kill the snitch. And with Gary Powers dying 15 years later, what I'm assuming is a botched attempt, it could be safe to assume that the CIA, Murkoff, or both wanted him dead for whatever reason, and the accident caused his death instead. Or, in the case of trials, a reagent caused this helicopter crash. Quickly showing and discussing the newspapers I haven't gone into great depths into talking about, I feel they share similar reasons for why the reagents are sent to commit these acts in the first place. Musicians are silenced for wanting to support peace between East and West Berlin. Senators suffer from the death of a fiancé and leave politics after advocating voting rights, and a foreign minister's death stalls peace talks. Though I could delve into these deeper, they all share a similar theme: to prevent progress from happening. Be it either rights or peace, the reagents are used to slow down outside forces into meddling with CIA affairs, and by association, Murkoff's. Within Deep Burn, however, we see an interesting change, which we discussed in the Deep Burn lore video. The reagents are using an increased amount of fire to complete their missions. On a ghost ship that was bound for Havana, Soviet tourists were among the passengers, and once the ship was found, no trace was left behind, as the deck of the ship had been scrubbed with bleach and salt water, and portions of the boat burned. No bodies were found, which indicates that the burns could have been the bodies themselves, perhaps being dumped overboard, or it's possible that they could have been kidnapped, as other newspapers show. It could also be possible that the reagents are thriving in the environment of destruction, more coordinated, or receiving outside help for some of their tasks, but that would be purely speculation. With a prison break that the reagents have committed, there's evidence of a gas leak. It's possible though that they are coordinated, but also still highly destructive and unpredictable. The prison break, however, was for a former member of the Carling or French Gestapo and notorious drug trafficker, Auguste Recorde. Drug trafficking is another trial the reagents experience firsthand. Murkoff has deep interest in the heroin trade, and with the surge of wealth it gives them and the funds it can indirectly give those that they support, with drugs flooding the streets, it allows a form of chaos to run rampant, along with control of the supplier. Reagents are being used just as Murkoff wanted them to be, to destroy political enemies, halt progress for rights, freedoms, and above all, the truth. With Deep Burn, the reagents are possibly thriving as sleeper agents, but also still suffer from being unpredictable, what with the increased pyromania that the reagents are suffering from. As time goes on though, what other tragedies could the reagents be used to commit? Like the fires the reagents use, they could become out of control. Will a reagent eventually slip up and get caught creating suspicion? A lot of questions could be asked from this, but let me know what you think down in the comments below. That is all that I have for now, but in the meantime, let me know your thoughts and theories, as I'd love to hear them. Let me know if I missed any details, and don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe to stay up to date on future videos, some being Let's Plays, some being these lore, theory, and discussion videos that will be posted at least once a week. Don't be afraid to let me know other subjects you'd be interested in, and hopefully I see you all in the next video. See you then.